Welcome to the Witch Wars podcast. I'm Krys Copeland, editor, co-author of Witch Wars Defense Manual Part 2, How to Win, and someone who believes silence protects abusers, not the community. With me is Ed Hubbard, someone who agrees with that, and the original author, the OG of the first Witch Wars Defense Manual, and someone who's been calling this shit out since long before it was trending. And this podcast isn't here to pick petty fights. It's here to protect, to expose, to confront the patterns that have allowed harm to thrive in pagan spaces, from influencer cults to institutions that value image over accountability. How are you, Ed?
I'm good, thank you. Um, Let me go ahead and add to that. So I've been at Witch Wars as a action that communities take since I began. One of the biggest things is that the thing about Witch Wars is that everyone thinks of them as bad, and yet they become necessary. And that is one of the things people don't understand. It's not like we can just be quiet. Cults form inside of spaces which are silent. And the question I had a long time ago, are we a faith, a religion, a community, or did we want to breed these cults?
Mm,
Ultimately, breeding cults was not the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to build a healthy community.
yeah, that's something really hard to do. I've seen in the pagan community. We've talked at length about kind of our disillusion with the idea of building community in such a dangerous place to build a community sometimes.
Well, the problem is that we start with a stereotype. And really, we have this gentleman by the name of Oberon Zell, who started really a hedonistic and cult-like fashion, in the sense that he claims to be the first to ever use paganism. And because of that, he tends to have these sort of behaviors. Now, he in himself has done a lot of good to the community, but he established the idea of hedonism and paganism and this sort of idea of messianics. You have Gardner, you have Saunders, you have all of these that are started with this idea more messianic than they did community. It came out of the hippie culture, it came out of the political culture. And people think of the environmental movement as being a great movement, but people forget it was very political. It was funded by Russians, the Soviet Union at the time, throughout the world to upset Western civilizations who didn't want environmentalism. And that was one of the first places I ever saw the term witch wars used. The environmentalists were being accused of creating witch wars, emotional wars, battles against the industrialists. And that was a very hippie movement. It was very much an environmental movement. And people saw it as a good thing, but there's a lot of dark side to that too, amongst themselves. Who's going to lead? I love the sermon Dune. And Dune, it says, who's going to practice power? Once power exists, who's going to practice the power? Who are going to choose to use power? Anytime you have a group of three or more people, they begin to wield power. Even if it's a small amount of power, you may not see it, but who gets to use that power? And that's a question that has been in the pagan community. It's been in the national communities and ever since all humanity. Once you have power forming, who gets to use the power? And then why?
No, that's a very excellent point. Systemic root of all abuse is taking away someone else's power, someone else's autonomy to choose for themselves.
Hmm.
Um, and that's it's interesting that we're creating this podcast right now because I have recently been appointed to head the Order of Survivors that was founded by uh, beloved Lady Wendy. And as part of that, I will be helping those who have experienced abuse in their lives. And yeah, it's kind of dawning on me how big of a responsibility that is, because at the same time that I am here to help people who have survived abuse, help survivors, I am also put into a position of power over those survivors by simply having this service available to them, this order available to them. And that has to come with a lot of cautions and a lot of policies put into place to make sure that I nor anyone else in the program can abuse that power. What would you recommend as far as like people who want to get started with eliminating abuse from their community and building a community without abuse? How do you even do that?
So you can't. Ultimately, you can't. All you can do is confront it and eliminate it from the individual sources. It is impossible to say to get rid of all abuse. It is impossible to get rid of all action. So we live in this perfect world.
Mm,
Believe me, if we did, we would be there already. What you can do is create space and create ways for those who are good and positive and doing great actions to have the energy and the flow and the non-interruption. The original Witch Wars manual was written for that purpose. It was written back in 2005 on a 10-day binge. I was so mad. I was so sick of it. Every year the Corellians had existed, especially once they started something called Witch School. Witch School became the first online public school. Along with, you had Cherry Hill, which was very much for the elitists, people who had college degrees, who wanted to do theology and do philosophy, and they did a great job. And they're still here today. Both these academics, 20-something years, are still there, but they had very different goals. But because our goals was base and popular to attract people, those who felt elite, those who felt not Cherry Hill so much, but people who felt elite, said you can't do that. That's terrible. And they would attack us every year. And the Krellins grew very quickly because we had a very accessible thing. And we believe that everybody should be a witch. Everybody should have that practice. And remember, and when our first flights were people like, oh no, you should only do initiations. Covenant of the Goddess. Only we can decide who are witches. That was our first abuse.
mm,
The right to say we could. We had it with Krys with Circle Sanctuary. With their problems, we can't make people clergy unless they're highly trained. And I pointed out in the United States, you can be clergy if your church says you're clergy.
mhm,
We have a freedom of religion. And so we were beginning, and that there were certain aspects of the religious law. And I was a paralegal at the time, and I studied it really well. And he said, no, once you have a church, it becomes reciprocal in most of the states of the Union. Once we figured that out, Universal Life Church, I think that we grew quite a bit. Now we required certain standards, but we were attacked year after year. Our groups were attacked year after year and after year to fight for this right of clergy, for recognized clergy. Now remember, you don't have to recognize clergy. If a group you don't like, you don't have to recognize it. Only the United States government and those governments which we've worked with, South Africa, we've done really well with, the Philippines, we've done well with, Britain, we've done well with. We've done well with other countries, but we started with the United States. And so the Rich Wars for Defense Manual was written with what I was seeing around me and how do you fight it. And after 10 days of writing it, it's a terrible book. I mean, in the sense of it's not properly edited. It's this Discordian manual. I didn't care. I mean, people have always gone back to it and said it's a hateful, angry book. Yes, it was. But it had really sound advice in there. And those witch wars across the United States calmed down. In 2006, they calmed down a lot. And everybody goes, why do they calm down so much? Well, I gave tools. It was a Witch Wars defense manual. I gave tools to people so they could start defending themselves. And it's probably one of the most downloaded books. People don't want to admit it. But you can download it today. Go to Crowley Publishing, go look on the page for buying the new book, and you can download the original manual.
mhm. Yeah, you can download it for free on the website.
Because I thought it was,
And sorry,
because
go
I thought it
ahead.
was so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we were recently accused in a video that has now been deleted by a member of the pagan media of using this uh, using this issue with Christian Day that has not just come up, but has repeatedly come up for the past 20 years as a way to like sell the book. But if we're giving it away for free, we're not making any money off of it. I can guarantee that. And the second one, we haven't sold any copies since I've written that document. So I don't know how we could actually be like profiting off of it without any profit. But I just wanted to clear that up that
So,
there is no profit in it for sure. There's no
so let's
profit in
talk
pagan
about that
media.
as the first attack. And let's be honest, it was Harold Carr of Witchcraft TV who basically made that accusation. Let's be very specific who it is. And that is the first common attack inside paganism. You're making money.
Mm,
Making money is taboo for many people. You can't make money off this. And that you're making money, this is where you're doing it because we somehow have turned making earnings into a crime.
mm,
And that is a first attack. It's the same as, oh, that rock band sold out when they were doing huge concerts. I remember when they were a house band. I saw Debbie Harry one time very early. Um, very early. So that was something that I had to deal with. But, people went, but then she got to be very big. And I remember people who saw her at the house, oh, she sold out. She didn't do. No, she's earning a living.
mhm,
Rock bands earn a living. Britney Spears earns a living. No, Taylor Swift earned more than ever. But if you don't like it, you attack it on the idea
mm.
that that it is, they sold out. They sold out to the system.
Yeah. So there's
That's
twofold in
what,
that argument. There's the idea that one, we're not actually making money on it because there is no money to be made in pagan media. And two, it's not illegal to make money. So yeah, absolutely. Um, I have a going back to this issue with Harold Carter, and what came up out of this was the situation with Christian Day, and I think that Christian Day is just a symptom of this disease, this deeper rot that is in the community. But he's definitely a great case study for witch wars in general. But can you tell me a little bit, because you've had experiences with Christian Day in the past, you've had run-ins with him too. Can you kind of recap what your knowledge is and your experience of him and his cult-like following is about?
well, Christian Day is a very different and unique character. I've known him since 2007, right before he got started. And he and I were like, we were friends. I mean, like real friends for a long time. And what broke us up as friends is I agree with him on 90% of what he talks about, but he will not treat human beings like human beings. He treats them like tools. He, in the day, we were both, I'll admit it, the Art of Negotiation and the books by Trump and The Apprentice, I was a big fan of all of that. Hmm? I was a huge fan of all of that.
Well, they weren't written by Trump anyway, so they were actually written by decent writers who knew their topic. So it
Sure,
makes
and
sense. They're good books, yeah, in
they were
general.
good books. I
Yeah.
mean, The Art of Negotiation it was a fantastic book. But there comes a moment when, for me, Trump jumped the fence when he went after Obama. Right, he showed his racist side. I didn't never see that. I saw him as, and remember, we were trained. So
And I think
basically,
the key word there is that you didn't see it. There's court documents showing that Trump had racist ideologies from back in the 80s when he refused to rent to black people. So we know that he has a history of it, but just because that's today, since since all of
right.
that stuff has come back up. But the average
So
person back then didn't have a clue.
Christian Day was trained in the same background. He was a New York advertising agent.
Mm.
And Sean Boyer, the King of Witches of Salem, was doing various types of works. And then he passed away, and Christian Day felt compelled to take over that position. So he didn't fit comfortably there, and he took on this very harsh attitude. He was afraid. He was not in control. And so and most abusers do so because they're not feeling in control. And when they don't feel in
Mhm.
control, this is one of the most important things. When abusers don't feel in control, even if they didn't start out as abusers, they do things to want to take control. So him it was being the Kardashians. He saw the negative side of media. But his brilliance, let's give him his brilliance, is he saw that Salem, as a tourist center, wanted to deal with what we say is muggles or the ordinary folk. And all they ever wanted was a reading, a t-shirt, and a shot glass. And that's what his job was. Is to give them a reading, a t-shirt, and a shot glass. And he did that very, very well with the Festival of the Dead. That financial control outside of our community gave him a lot of control into it. Plus, you got to remember, Salem has got a very distinct system for legal. It's one of the few places in the country you can legally read. And I call, he wants to describe to me, and I've used it, is the pimp and whore system.
Mm.
Meaning a shop gets a license. This is how it works. A shop gets a license, and then they're allowed to have up to 5 readers. But every reader has to also be licensed through that shop. Okay, that's a very important distinction. They can't be independent. They can't do anything. They have to work through a shop. So
So there's
that,
control built into the system,
right, the shop is then held liable.
which means
He,
there's abuse built into the system too.
that's why it's called the pimp and whore system.
Yeah.
So he is the pimp who gets the psychics to do tricks. If they lose it, and it's good money. I mean, let me tell you, there are people who've gotten very, very good money, some who've gotten wealthy now over the last 20 years from this. But if he doesn't like you or you do something, you can lose your license in a moment. And it's not like you can go to another shop. You have to go through the whole process again. You have to find a licensed shop, which are few, and get picked up, or you can't work in Salem anymore. That started where I think his biggest abuse is. And then he has the big psychic fair with 20 psychics, which I made $6,000. He made 50, I sold $15,000 reading, which I made back 6,000. I
Mm.
only got 35% of the money.
So he keeps the lion's share as well.
And his argument let's be honest, it's 50-50 in a lot of areas. But he took the extra 15% because of all the extra expenses and all the advertising.
Mm.
And you're buying into it. So I bought into it. So I'm not discarding that. All right. But he controls that. And it's a contractor position, but he treats you like an employee. Meaning he tells you when you're working, how you're working. If you miss a day, they treat you like an employee. Big violation of it. But no one talks about it because money.
Yeah.
Christian Dave
And
gets away with a lot of things, as all abusers do, because of money.
yeah, you talked about how his biggest abuses came when he was given the power to abuse, and that's really explains like why he is simply a symptom of this deeper disease in the community, this rot in our community of like hero worship and gatekeeping disguised as tradition. Like the Salem Council gets to decide who can be a psychic and who cannot. That right there is gatekeeping, and gatekeeping in a capitalist society on a capitalist project is just just weird in my thinking. Like it should not exist. If we're going to have a free market system, it should be completely free market. And then there's predatory capitalism involved in that as well, where it's all about making the profit and not providing the service that the reader is paying or that the person being read is paying for. And it creates this culture of silence and fear of speaking out because they're afraid to lose this 6,000 or however much they're making in 1 month on this psychic
Mhm.
fair.
Now, New Orleans is the opposite. You don't have to have a license, and it's as abusive, and it's far more abusive than it is Salem. I mean, I understand Salem's control, why they do it, and it makes it a healthier community. Believe it or not, it makes it a healthier community. Because when you compare it to New Orleans, they fight over spots, they fight over shops. And where's Christian Day? Fighting very well. He's there too. Hmm?
Yeah, he's there for now, but he's closing one of his stores there, and the other one looks like on the brink of disaster at this point. So I don't see. I think he's going to be
So
run out of New Orleans soon too, just like he was in Salem.
let me tell you, that's reputational combat. That's a witch war.
Yeah, and they're
I mean,
going
people
after him
say
hard. You don't fuck with voodoo priestesses. That's one thing you don't do is don't fuck with the voodoo
Christian Day will be
priestesses.
there 10 years from now.
I
He
I
will
don't think
win.
so. I think he'll be gone in a year.
We'll see, but I will tell you, I can see what he's doing. Like people are trying to say that he's going broke,
Yeah.
right? He's heading towards retirement, folks. He's 60 fucking almost 60 fucking years old. 60 years old. He's heading towards retirement. He closed the shop and the shop he closed in uh Hex uh in New Orleans was because, right? Was because he got 3 times the price he paid for that. And he's starting to consolidate towards retirement. So he's going to get away with it like a lot of them because
Well,
it's
I've heard different, like right now there is $1 million lawsuit against him that's just started in the New Orleans system.
and we're going to continue heading and hearing these things.
Mhm.
No lawsuits ever stuck because our system set. This is what a witch war is really like. We don't have the truth. Everybody's saying it, and everybody wants to believe it. Everybody has their own personal bias. What is witch wars at its core? It's a reputational conflict that eventually leads to people's destruction in some form or manner. What was it in Salem? None of those people were telling the truth, but everybody believed it, and then they killed people over it. What is witch wars but the reputational conflict that is necessary to destroy somebody, to eliminate them from your system? So everything that's surrounding Christian Day is essentially a witch war, right? Because no one's really making it true. We're not seeing we're not seeing pictures from the inside of a courtroom of him being charged. We're hearing it. I have heard about $1 million lawsuit against Christian Day for 20
Oh,
years.
I've seen the documentation. It's already done. Like it's already in the system. I've been talking to the
And
survivors of his abuse. I've seen the documents. I've seen the filings. It's happening.
and this conversation right here is at the heart of a witch war, where people are trying to convince, where you're, and quite rightly so, trying to convince me that Christian Day is in trouble. And I
I
don't
don't need
believe
to
it.
convince you. I mean, I've seen the evidence. So whether you believe it or not is another thing. But for our audience's opinion, for our audience's information, I have seen the documentation. I believe that Christian Day
And this
will be
is
found
the
responsible in court.
and this is the essence of a witch war. This disagreement right here is what witch wars prey upon.
Hmm.
Oberon is a good guy. Yeah, we've heard. So let me tell you about the greatest witch war in our community that we're ignoring, and we will not hold it to. And it's been conviction, and people will still back him up. Kenny Klein. Let's talk about. He was convicted and died in jail. He was a child photographer, pornographic. He was caught with it for over 20 years. Every woman, every child, everybody who went to the authorities within these festivals that said they were having abuse were shut down. Why? Because Kevin Klein was one of the most successful musicians in our community. Okay.
But
And
he
nobody,
did die in jail. In the end, he still
and
died in
convicted,
jail. Yeah,
right?
and I think that Christian Day is headed for that same route. Maybe not in jail, but he's definitely going to die penniless from these lawsuits.
And that's fine. But let's talk about Kenny Klein. Let's not go into Christian Day because Christian Day is many things, but he's not a child molester. Hmm? He's
That we
just not.
know of.
No, this is something I do know. Hmm? He's
That we
just not.
know of.
No, this is something I do know. I mean, this is something I don't believe. I've never seen the evidence. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, but that's not important, right? What is important, Kevin Klein was a child abuser. Hmm? He was photographing pagan children. We never got to see the photographs. Once he got claimed, the police would not let us see him under the rules. We don't know who was attacked. We don't know who was he selling kids' photos. We know a few because they came out. But what happened? Every time a mother or a woman would talk about it, they would be shut down by the festivals, even tossed out of festivals to protect Kevin Klein. They did that for over 20 years until they got raided. He got raided. And then you find out who did he hang out? Oberon Zell, Isaac Bonowitz, all of the musicians. They all defended him because so he's the opposite of what we're looking there. They all protected him and tossed people out.
And they've done
Oh,
the
good.
same with Christian Day too. They've tossed people out and defended him too. It's
But let's not
shocking to
get into
me.
Christian Day. Let's
Yeah.
just stick with this Kevin Klein. Because what happens is that witch wars will take possession of your mind. One of the things that happens to people is that their minds get possessed by the enemy. And Kenny Klein was that way. Then they convicted him. I have over 30 radio shows. And what did those good people want me to do? They wanted me to erase all the shows he was on, which I refused to do because they're public record. So this, even after they are found guilty, even though we found him guilty, the people that were the right people, the just people, the people that we look up to, wanted me to bury the fact that they had done interviews with Kenny Clark.
Mm,
They want to take this abuse and then bury it. Hmm? We never have to deal with it. The festivals still have not taken care, still have not built systems. I have a real issue with a lot of the festivals because they're based on hedonism. They're based on, which I love. Don't get me wrong, I'm a hedonist. Love the opening, right? But they're not taking care of what to do when somebody is an abuser. A few of the newer festivals are doing it, but the older festivals, they don't care. But they will then bury the enemy. They will bury the fact that they were involved.
mm.
You see that. So their reputations were set, what were what? Intact.
So the issue with Kevin Klein that still exists today, because he's dead, he's gone, he died in jail. But the
And we
issue that
know that
still exists,
he committed these crimes at our
yeah,
festivals.
yeah, and the issue that still exists today from that scenario is that there are other people that were involved in that situation that have not been held accountable for it, or that got away with whatever their involvement was in it.
Even if it was just burying it. Hmm?
Hmm. Yeah, even if it's just covering it up, it's still covering up crimes, especially
Right.
crimes against children.
And no one talks about Kenny Klein. No one talks about what are we going to do to protect our children. So that was, in essence, a witch work against anyone who would accuse him. They would do anything to protect him. Why? Because he was a musician. He was accepted. He was a member of our community for a very long time. He was considered one of the elders.
Mm.
And so that reputational war continued for a long time to bury a crime. Which was reputational warfare. And anyone who accused him did so. You got the same thing happened to you. I mean, you were accusing one of the Krellian members, of our Krellian members, and you were not listened to, in fact, punished
Hmm.
to bury
Yeah,
it. So it's happened to you.
yeah,
And what was it? It was a reputational conflict. And people felt justified burying you.
yeah.
You
It
were,
took a year to reestablish that I was telling the truth. It took another priestess coming forward and saying that she had the same experience with this man before anybody listened.
right. So that's the essence of a reputational conflict. There is, and which words breathes most? There was a man in Chicago who got away with abusing women and everything else until he died. He never was held accountable. And he would destroy me. Accused me of being a cocaine dealer, crack dealer, tried to push me out of the community when I was very young and working in it. I won't even mention his name anymore because we buried his name, not his behaviors, but his name. And he died. His heart ripped apart. Hmm? I had the FBI. So bad was reputational conflict, which was I had FBI come down to me in when I was in Hudson, Illinois, and actually interview me. And the first, I said, well, Jack Armstrong's passed away, right? And they asked me, did you do it? I go, well, I would love to have been the person who did it, but I have no means of doing it.
Yeah,
And they left me alone. I mean, they took me off of it. Would I have wanted to do it? Sure. I mean, I would have admitted to it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm known. So my aspect of Witch Force is I'm known for advocating violence if necessary. Hmm?
yeah.
And people consider that very abusive. And I will agree with you. It's an abusive statement. I shouldn't do that.
I don't think it's abuse if you're defending yourself. Like
Right.
that's my self-defense is not abuse.
It can be. Mine was on that edge, that sort of thing. But I'm not a, threefold pagan, which says, oh, everything returns to you. I said, okay, I'll pay that price
Yeah.
uh, for that. So you get into a lot of things, but let's go ahead and finish this up with something fairly simple. How do you know you're in a witch war? One, you're being accused for things silently. It usually starts with a silent accusation. We call it gossip, but it's not gossip. Gossip is, oh, he's dating a guy. She's dating this person, right? Oh, she had this terrible moment. Gossip, while dangerous and terrible, right, is the breeding ground of accusations. Oh, He's a thief. I think he steals things. I think he's, doing wrong things. Not true. Oh, the office supplies are going down. Let's take your office. We're losing office supplies. Instead of looking at the cost, you go, oh, I think ABC, Joe, let's go just name a random person, is stealing them.
Mm.
Why? Because he's not making enough money and he needs them for his school kids. An accusation? Not true. Combined with a reasonable reason why he would steal.
Mm.
Right? So
Yeah,
then,
it
oh yeah,
doesn't even
that
have to
makes
be an accusation. It could be something like, "Oh, I saw Joe coming out of the supply closet with a bunch of stuff." Could it have been him?
yeah,
No.
that accusation. So they go out
Hmm.
there. Or usually the hardest worker gets accused of, oh, they didn't finish their work. They didn't do this. They didn't meet the deadline. Instead of investigating why they didn't do the deadline, they want to put it all, it's called scapegoating.
Yeah.
You put it on the individual. And they keep it there on that individual. And then it grows and grows as more and more people don't want to answer the real question. Which wars begin where there's no real question? That's why I brought up Kevin Klein. He, their accusations were there, they were open, but nobody wanted to admit that it was. So eventually you get your scapegoat. Oh, the women who are accusing him is lying. This is the
Mm.
number one accusation against women. They're lying against powerful men.
Lying in mass across different regions, across different times, just lying in mass. That's yeah,
Right. They're all delusional.
yeah,
And if you can get the idea is I'm going to protect my reputation so that I continue to do the things that I want to. Only when those accusations get evidence do we pierce that veil. You find out the young woman gets fired, and all of a sudden the office completely falls apart. Well, why? Because that woman was doing the work. Oh, let's bring her back. And then she's gone. She's
mm,
gotten a better job. She's done this. Right? Or being abused is, oh, I'll come back and get some more abuse.
mm,
But what happens? That scapegoat is removed.
yeah,
Even if it is by burning, even if it's by hanging. In a gang, it's by being shot. And these are practiced amongst corporations. You get fired, and your reputation gets so you can't be hired. The problem is the consequences of being accused falsely. So the minute that begins to happen, you have to begin to defend yourself. I think in the next podcast we'll talk about how to defend yourself,
yeah.
how to begin
That's
the
right.
process of doing so. But right
Mm.
now, don't let yourself be accused falsely, right?
Yeah, and I have a question for you because there's a lot of times people who come to this realization that they're no longer going to be part of this corrupt system, like you went through this process yourself, that you decided this was not, you didn't want to be silent anymore. For me, I never knew how to be silent. I was just always talking and telling what I saw and what I experienced with a zero filter, and that's how I ended up in this work of helping survivors. But for you, what was that moment where you were like, enough is enough? Fuck this. I'm done with it. I'm going to call out everybody. I'm going to make this, I'm going to draw a line in the sand. What was that moment?
So I decided I was going to be the dirty dog. I didn't care about my reputation, and I still don't. Understand, my reputation has a better time than I do. Um, I decided I didn't care anymore because I kept seeing good people attacked, and I
Mm,
wanted to make sure if you're going to attack good people, I was going to attack back. So Reverend Don was just getting started in his career. I mean, he started growing into a nationwide and eventually a global figure that I feel that he deserves.
yeah.
We don't see the same things about it. Selena Fox's people were being attacked. I saw so many people, good people, being attacked to take them down over against this sort of older occult elite. And I decided, no, I'm not going to let them be attacked. I'm going to defend them so they can focus on their things. Eventually, today, I'm very proud of that. So many leadership made it through their trials and tribulations. And I fought, and I've taught people how to do this, how to fight, fights this back. because I'd rather fight, know that I fought, not try to save their reputations. Let them have their reputations. Let them do their good works. But I started fighting back reputationally. Why are you doing this to the person? So I started confronting people. And
Mm,
this is why I've got a really nasty, dark reputation in the pagan community. I do. And okay. Because I need to have, and today, what do we got? The Corellians eventually ended up on the main stage, which was my life's goal, at the Parliament of World's Religions, which is a highly political organization. Let's not make no bones about it. The Parliament of World's Religions is a high, and we didn't, you know who the biggest fighters with us were? Other pagan groups. They were
mm,
jealous. They were mad. But we made it there. We've made it into being in the world in so many different ways. We've helped people. And we've also lost people. We've lost, and I won't go into the details, but we've had a member of ours beheaded. I mean, actually
mm.
beheaded.
Yeah, I
It was
remember
more
that.
than a decade ago, but so I began to fight for people so they can do their job, do what they want, to find their way. And even today I still fight, of that quarter. Now I'm more quiet. Now I'm fighting for something new, but the lessons of which war stay the same. You
Yeah.
cannot allow your reputation to be attacked and consistently attacked and think there's no harm in that.
Yeah. And this was just the beginning. These leaders that end up being caught up in these leaders that abuse other people in the community, or even if they're not leaders, they're the people that abuse in our community. They're only a symptom of what's of this deeper infection. So in that next episode, we'll go in deeper into the tactics that abusers use to stay in power, and
Mhm.
how our community keeps falling for it, as well as lessons straight from the Witch Wars manuals, not theory, but strategy for how to, one, prevent yourself from becoming involved in these situations, and two, how to stop it when you notice that it's happening in your community. So if you're ready to stop playing nice and start protecting what matters, you're in the right place. Thank you for joining us today. Blessed be and stay vigilant.
Let's be